Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to what I think is the first ever um, John Howard Society week, a week of activities. It's all part of a national program that's been going on for some years, but more importantly, from what we can tell from our research, it's the first time that the John Howard Society of Prince Edward Island has actually, number one, recognized the week exists, and number two, has put together a program of activities based on some of the federal pillars. And so I want to acknowledge the work of Bryn and the team here at John Howard for having developed the schedule for the week, and also reaching out to you folks in the community organizations, our partners, who we work with, and so we're looking forward to a week of sharing, a week of learning as we move forward. And I believe today you'll be noted as the first ever participants, the first ever presenters to the John Howard Society of Prince Edward Island week of activities. And I believe we have Laura and Andrea from Canadian Mental Health Association, who are going to talk to us about some, as I understand it, some of the programs and the things that you do. And many of the clients that you see are the same clients that we interact with. So we're looking forward to having a better understanding of your world, and hopefully others out there who we've invited to participate will also get a better understanding of your programs and services from CMHC. So not sure who wants to kick it off, Andrea or Laura. Over to you folks.
Thanks, Keith. Laura's going to share her screen. We've got a presentation to put up. So yeah, I'm Andrea, the coordinator for the Housing Outreach Program, and Laura is the coordinator for the Housing First program. Both programs are with Canadian Mental Health, and we're going to share some of the other programs Canadian Mental Health has, and then we're also going to go into a bit of detail about what our programs do and how we help the folks that we work with, which would definitely be some of the same folks that you guys work with. So yeah, I guess, as I said, Andrea and Laura from CMHA. So some of the programs that CMHA offers include, as we've discussed, housing supports. We also have clubhouse programs. So we have 3 clubhouse programs across PEI. One in Charlottetown, the Fitzroy Clubhouse, one in Alberton, and one in Summerside. So the clubhouse programs offer different programs within them. They offer housing support, they offer education, they offer help to get back into employment. They also offer affordable meals, and they offer some transportation, such as to appointments. So it's a great support to folks with mental health. We also offer a peer support program. So this is one of our newer programs the last few years. So we have currently peer support workers trained working in Charlottetown and Montague, and we're looking to expand that program as well to the UPEI campus, as well as expanding it to our other offices in Summerside and in Alberton. We also do a lot of training and support. So training such as assist, suicide to hope, mental health first aid, lots of education programs. And the White Cross program is a program around the holidays, looking for gifts from the community to provide to folks that are participating in our programs. And that program has been going on for a long time. I think it's one of our longest programs. So yeah, we have the 4 main offices in Charlottetown, Summerside, Montague, and Alberton, offering a variety of different programs. Go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, the clubhouse is in Charlottetown, Summerside, and Alberton, and all three clubhouses offer supportive housing. So that each clubhouse has a different model and some different options for support. Some of the housing levels have staff have staff in the building 8 to 4 Monday to Friday. Some have staff 7 to 7, like our Summerside program, and some have staff that can just be accessed as needed, more in an emergency situation. So to be connected with one of these housing programs, if you had a client that was interested, they would just need to be connected with a CMHA program, such as our program, such as the clubhouse, peer support. Any of those programs can connect them further to the housing and assess kind of what they need, whether it's a more supportive housing or less support, where they're just able to connect with staff in an emergency. And we would forward the names onto our head office to put them on a wait list. And as I said, identify which housing would be most suitable. Continue.
Okay, so I'm going to chat a little bit about West Prince Housing. So they are located in Alberton, and they'll support individuals who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. So if they're precariously housed, they're facing eviction, their housing isn't safe, isn't suitable for them anymore, they can get connected to West Prince Housing. So any individual can complete a referral for West Prince. You don't have to be already a member of any of the clubhouses. You don't have to be already connected to CMHA program. You can directly contact West Prince Housing and complete one of their referrals. So they support sort of west of Summerside and all the way up to Tyne Valley, Tignish, all the way up west. They'll support anybody up there. They also utilize a housing first approach. They're not specifically a housing first program, but they work in a very similar way. They're very low barrier. Folks can be, in active addiction or struggling with their mental health. There's no sort of requirements for them to be in recovery or anything like that. Ideally, once they're housed, that could be a goal of theirs, is to start working on their mental health or their addiction. So West Prince Housing will support them with finding safe, affordable housing, get them connected to financial support. So whether they have been employed and they need EI, if they have never been employed and they want to get connected to social assistance or accessibility supports, West Prince Housing staff will get them connected with the food bank and the soup kitchen, any other supports that they need. They'll get them connected within the program. So if anyone's interested in West Prince Housing, if we have clients that are up west, we definitely can give you the name. We should have included it on here, but Maureen or Laura are the two staff in Alberton, and we can definitely pass along their contact information in case anyone would like that going forward. And transitional housing. So transitional housing is relatively new within the last couple of years. So they are based in Charlottetown. It's a 10-bed facility program to support individuals primarily coming out of hospital or group home settings who need support with living independently. These individuals can be struggling with their mental health or an addiction. The program is based on recovery, so and there is no substance use within the program. So individuals do have to be actively working on recovery. And then individuals will be working on life skills development, learning healthy habits, a routine, and getting connected to different community supports and services. So these individuals do have to have a referral completed by a health PEI staff or program or an internal CMHA program. So if they're already connected to Andrea or myself, and perhaps they're just needing more support than our program can provide, we could get them connected to transitional housing, or if they are connected to one of the clubhouses as well, they could get a referral to transitional housing. The program is 10 beds, as we said. So on the main floor, there's 6 bedrooms. So those are bedroom bathrooms. And then those 6 individuals share common living space. So kitchen, living room, and then they complete programming every day. There is, an expectation of following a cleaning and cooking schedule to enhance those skills as well. And then those individuals can start looking for volunteer opportunities, perhaps advancing their education or search for employment. And then upstairs, so it's a 2-level building, 3-level, I guess, with the basement, but upstairs there's 4 1-bedroom apartments. So ideally we see folks starting out on the first floor, enhancing some of those skills, and then transitioning upstairs into the 1-bedroom apartments. And in the 1-bedroom apartments, they're much more independent. They can come and go. Ideally, they'll have employment or education working on something during the day. But they still do have access to staff in case of an emergency. If they have a crisis, something's going on, they do still have staff 24/7 in the building that they can access. Andrea, I think that's it for transitional. Anything else?
Yeah, this would just be one of our highest levels of supportive housing, with staff being there 24/7. And there would be an expectation that they're there for a year and a half and then able to move on to independent housing. So we are looking for folks that are eventually going to be ready to live independently.
And a lot of the time these folks, so they would start, like we said, start on the main floor, move up into those 1-bedroom apartments. And then we've seen a number of individuals get referred to Andrea's program, the housing outreach program. And often that's sort of the next step of being out on their own and being more independent, but still having access to a staff, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, to, still maintain a little bit of support as they transition to independence.
So yeah, housing outreach is the program that I'm the coordinator for. And as we mentioned, this would kind of be the next level for folks coming out of transitional housing program. It would also similarly be the next level for folks who have also been at Talbot, Lacey, St. Eleanor's, Strength, and other similar recovery programs. And we would be looking again for folks that are able to live independently, looking to rent in the community. So we don't have housing, which is a common misconception. We don't have our own housing. So we would be looking just on the regular market for housing, and looking to work with the person to find housing through Kijiji, calling landlords, getting them to engage in that housing search with them. So they can be referred from Health PEI or an internal program. We would help them if they don't have a source of income to find income for their rent. We would ask that they meet with us weekly to engage, as I said, in the housing search, and also to learn any skills they need to be working further on. So it could be budgeting, cooking, cleaning, etc. And we would be looking to move on and get them housed within 6 to 18 months. This program has support workers in Charlottetown, 2 in Charlottetown, and then myself as well in Charlottetown mainly, and 1 worker in Summerside, and we cover the whole island. So we could work with anyone anywhere on the island, even though our staff are in the 2 main cities. And yeah, we'll talk a bit more about what the program does a bit further on.
Okay, so I am the program coordinator for Housing First. So just a little bit about my program. There are some similarities and some differences between Housing First and Housing Outreach. So referrals can be completed by anybody. The individual can complete the referral themselves. They can complete it with a support person, such as the staff at John Howard. They can complete it with, a family member if they need support, but any referrals are accepted. So we support chronically and episodically homeless individuals, and they have to be willing to accept weekly in-home visits with their support worker. That is the only requirement for our program. There's no compliance requirements with regards to sort of independent living or recovery from their mental illness or addiction. ideally, sort of the premise of Housing First is exactly that, that they will get housing. We can't expect individuals to focus on an addiction or a mental illness when they don't know where they're sleeping tonight. They haven't had a meal, and they are, you know, their basic needs haven't been met. So we want to get those basic needs met, safety and security, and then allow the individual the opportunity to identify what goals are important to them that they would like to work on. So in-home visits or visits, you know, at the community outreach center or out in the community, just a regular meeting with their support worker is the only requirement. So we do support high acuity individuals, and they do have to have an income source. So kind of like Andrea said, for outreach, we don't provide them with the financials that they require to obtain housing. So we support them with getting them connected to EI or social assistance or accessibility supports, or finding employment if that's important to them. So we would help them with that. So yeah, so as I said, it's a low barrier program. There's no compliance requirements, and just that they have to meet with us regularly. And then ideally we'll set some goals. It's client centered, so whatever's important to them, we'll support them with. We also have 2 staff in Charlottetown, and then myself, I split my time between Summerside and Charlottetown, and we have another staff who's based in Summerside as well. And our program differs from outreach in that we support within the city limits. So within Charlottetown, sort of Stratford, Cornwall, and then within Summerside. Those are sort of our limits. Yeah, I think that's sort of the main sort of similarities and differences. We also don't have housing, as Andrea identified. We can get people connected to the CMHA clubhouse housing or other housing across CMHA, but Housing First and Housing Outreach specifically, we don't have housing. So we connect with landlords, we build those community relationships with the landlords and other community partners through coordinated access and HIFIS to get our folks housed. So as I identified, our approach specifically with Housing First, housing is a basic right. We help individuals find housing regardless of recovery, sobriety, or working on their mental health. We also will work with them regardless of their tenancy history. So some of the folks have struggled to maintain housing in the past and are well known to perhaps some of the landlords within the community. We will advocate on their behalf that being connected to our program is only positive. To have an individual following them, supporting them, checking in with them, that's a safety for the client, but that's also a sort of a safety feature for the landlord as well, that someone's checking in on their unit, making sure that things are staying clean. If things aren't going well, that there's a staff member who is there regularly to support that individual. And we go in if an individual does get evicted or leaves, perhaps, and we need to go in and clean up the unit, we will do that to sort of salvage the relationship that we have with the landlord. Again, with Housing First approach, there's no compliance requirements, so an individual does not have to be living in recovery from mental illness or addiction. And then we do follow a person-centered approach as well. So the individual creates their care plan and their goals, whatever is important to them. If they've identified, that they want to find employment, but they're not willing to work on their mental illness or their addiction, we'll support them with whatever goals that they've identified are important. And then also confidentiality is a huge component of our programs. So ensuring that we share the information that the individual has identified as important to them for us to share with community partners and not sharing anything else. And we always identify with the clients that, we're never calling community partners that they've given us permission to talk to just to share information about them that's not important or pertinent to their care plan. We share only what's needed. And then there's always exceptions to confidentiality, as we all know. We want to make sure we keep these folks safe. So if they identify harm to themselves or others, and a few other, we all know the confidentiality things that, we're going to do what we need to keep folks safe. And then we really hope that the individual will advocate with us and with other community partners for what they need. And we listen to that, and we follow follow their lead on the goals that they'd like to accomplish.
So as we mentioned, both programs also focus on independent living skills, so engaging with the client based on their case plan on what they need to work on to maintain their housing. So some of the things we're looking at are budgeting, setting up and paying utilities, cleaning, laundry, grocery planning, cooking, and food handling. That would also include like looking at what they're getting in their food box from the food bank and how to help them use all those items, problem solving, time management, landlord relations, tenant responsibilities. Guest management is something that we find is a huge issue with a lot of our folks, and something that often leads to their eviction. So, working on that education piece on how to manage the folks that come into their units and maybe don't want to leave or maybe don't want to treat their units respectfully. And we also provide transportation to appointments, and we also provide education and support to learn the bus routes in their areas to help them get around and be more independent. I think that's it. So as well, we try to foster their connections in the community. So if they have existing connections, whether it's family, friends, other organizations, we try to encourage those because we're not always going to be available. We work 8 to 4. We also work with them only for a certain time period. So we want to increase those connections and support them to increase those connections themselves as well. So always setting them up for success by connecting them with food banks, soup kitchens, thrift stores, also connecting them with accessibility or other employment if that's their goal, legal services if they're dealing with anything legally, we can help with that, showing them to the outreach center or shelters as needed, and any other services that they may need. Did you have anything to add, Laura?
Yeah, just a big part of our advocating and getting folks connected is with the clubhouses. The clubhouses are such a wraparound support, and the peer support program as well for a lot of the folks that we work with. It's important to them that the people surrounding them understand what they're experiencing and things that they're going through, and peer support really does that. Peer support is folks that are lived experts. So they maybe have struggled with a mental illness or an addiction. They've had legal struggles, lots of different things. So Clubhouse and peer support are two programs within CMHA that we really like to see folks get connected to. Because as Andrea said, our programs maybe have a timeline. There's no, definitive timeline on our programs. If folks continue to need support, we're there to support them. But eventually we'd like to see them move on in independence. Whereas Clubhouse specifically is somewhere that when you're a member for life. And that's what they tell you when you sign up for Clubhouse. So that's somewhere that they can always go and access for support. Like Andrea said, if it's for different life skills, if it's just for some community support and friendship, that's Clubhouse can really benefit folks in the community. I think that's all for us.
Neat. Thank you, ladies. I don't know if anyone has any questions for Andrea or Laura.
I have a question, actually. Just curious as what the wait list looks like for your Housing First program.
So it's a little bit hard to give a definitive answer. So the wait list is always evolving. So we do sort of identify it as a priority list in that individuals are put on the priority list based on when they completed their referral, but also at what acuity level their SPDAT score sets them at. So, someone could be on the priority list, and then if we have someone come in crisis who scores higher, they would go up on the wait list. We do like to try to balance how long people have been on the list for, as well as their score. So, and, our current caseload is full, but, tomorrow or next week, we could have 4 individuals who identify that they no longer want our support, and then 4 spots open up and we're able to take on 4 people, whereas we might not have any movement for 6 months on our wait list. So, I would say there's probably 30 to 40 individuals that we have referrals for that are waiting. And that can evolve as well, because when we do try to contact folks to get them intaked into the program, perhaps their phone number has changed. They're not living here anymore. They've maybe already found housing. So maybe the first 5 names that we go through, we're either not able to contact, or they no longer need the supports. And then we're able to move even further into the priority list.
And so your transitional housing, like the stage 2, where they're in an apartment, so there's 4 units there. I would assume that it's probably hard to find them housing to move them out of that program. So do you find that there's kind of a period of time where somebody might be in there longer, or quite a bit longer than the 1.5 years that you typically set that timeline, just because there's nowhere for them to go?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, and I would say the same even for Housing First and Housing Outreach as well. We might have folks who once they're moved into their unit, they might be ready to go. They have the independent living skills, and maybe we would only need to keep them on another month or 2 just to make sure they're settled. We get them everything they need, connected to whoever their supports are, and then we might close their file. But it's taking us 2 or 3 times as long to find that initial housing, that then we would be, folks that maybe we would have closed in 6 months a few years ago could be taking a year or longer, just because we're trying to find those units. So yes, there is definitely a bottleneck there of trying to find folks housing to get them moved on, to open up another spot in all of our programs.
Thank you.
Hey, I just have a question with regards to your Charlottetown properties, if I could call it that. I had a tour of the facility on St. Peter's Road there by the Murchison Center, and understand the phases that clients go through and hopefully move on. It's a wonderful facility, and I can see the challenges with getting people to move on, because it's such nice accommodations, in a city where accommodations are challenging. Let's face it. What's the relationship between that facility and your Fitzroy Street facility, the new building? I just want to make sure I have an understanding of the differences or similarities between the services that are offered between the two buildings, or the 2 programs, maybe.
Yeah, so the building on St. Peter's Road, 72 St. Peter's, is separate from the building on 203 Fitzroy. The folks living at 72 are there temporarily. They're looking to gain the skills and then move on. So they could, once they're ready to move on, they could be moved into 203 Fitzroy if there was a unit available, or we could move them into the private market, finding units through, Kijiji or any of the landlords in the area. But 203 Fitzroy is one of the buildings that we own, and we rent it out to folks who are connected to our programs. So there's no real eligibility. It would be kind of just folks who are needing housing that we are connected with through CMHA. So they could come from our program, they could come from peer support, they could come from Clubhouse. It would just be identifying that they're needing an apartment and they're looking for affordable housing. And then once they're in that building, there is support through the housing unit, which is on the main floor of that building, which is a unit of the Clubhouse. But they could also just be living there and be totally independent and remain there in that unit for as long as they need it. So 203 is essentially an apartment building that we own, and the folks that live there are connected through our programs. And it's no different than any other unit. It's just an affordable unit for folks with mental health.
Okay, well, thank you for that that clarification. I guess I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but given that people can stay there as long as they need that accommodation, and given the situation, we could probably use a few more of those types of complexes
Definitely.
around the island, but in
Yeah.
Charlottetown, not only for individuals that may be connected through your programs, but just individuals in society at large. It seems to me that that's one of the significant gaps in the housing continuum is people trying to move forward, but just can't seem to get that, get to the next rung on the ladder, so to speak,
Yeah.
to have housing
Definitely.
security.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's difficult for the average person on the island to find housing and afford housing. So I can't imagine those that are struggling with mental health and employment issues to try to keep a unit as well.
Yep.
I think I could speak for everyone when I say it was very informative and I think really helpful kind of internally of John Howard to kind of better understand exactly how the programs are broken up and how you guys all work together across the island, but also kind of beyond our walls. And people are learning a little bit more about the sector and everything as well. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you guys for having us.
Ooh.
Thank you. Have a nice day, folks.